السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وأفضل الصلوات وتم التسليمات على المبعوث رحمة العالمين سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وآله وصحبه أجمعين. So, for all of you who are joining us, I'd like to welcome you to the first of three live stream sessions for those who are going on the Oasis organized Umrah in a few weeks during this blessed month of Rabi al-Awwal, where we will be joined by Dr. Omar and Sheikh Mohammed al-Jailani and Dr. Maryam Shaybani al-Faqir, myself, and inshallah we are hoping that this will be something transformative for all of us and something that we can uh, be to look upon in our sahifa, in our mizan, in our list of deeds, that we make it sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in this particular session, what I would like to do is kind of just address the idea of Umrah in general, um, go through it kind of basically, generally, and then we're going to leave time for questions that we have received some questions already via the links that were sent out to all of you. So, usually when we speak about Umrah, we talk about Hajj and Umrah. And Hajj is a faridah, it's one of the five pillars of Islam. For those who are able to do it, and as mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu لمن استطاع إليه سبيلا, for the one who has a sabil, the one who has a way by which to do it. And that particular condition or qualification also holds true for the Umrah, namely that one person who's going has the means by which to get there. And by means, we mean not just financial means, but also physically they're able to travel. That to travel to get to it is not laden with undue difficulty. So not something where like there's a war zone in between you and where you need to go to the Hijaz, and there's not some sort of severe type of strife that will prevent you from going. If those things are facilitated, and we live in an age where travel, alhamdulillah, is greatly facilitated. It used to be that people had to set out months before, if not even a year, when they wanted to go to Hajj or to go to Umrah. And now it's just a few hours away in terms of a flight, a plane flight. So that's a big ni'mah, it's a big blessing for this ummah as we're living now. So the Hajj is a faridah. The Umrah itself um, is also a faridah in the sense that those components that are part of the Hajj are also part of the Umrah. So everything that we do in the Umrah is also going to be done in Hajj, but in Hajj we're going to add things to it that are part of it. And there are different ways to make Hajj. You can intend, for example, Hajj al-Qiran is to intend both Hajj and Umrah at the same time. So the pillars or the manasik that you're doing for Umrah, you're also intending them for Hajj. Then there's Hajj Tamattu', which means that you do Hajj by itself and you don't you do Umrah first, and then you stay a period of time. Then you do Hajj in the days of Hajj. Then there's Hajj Ifrad, which means you only intend Hajj and then you do Umrah separate time and so forth. So Umrah or in Hajj in general, after you've done it the first time, that's wajib. It's sunnah to do it, or mandub. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was asked by some of the Sahaba, أَكُلَّ عَامٍ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, and every year should we do it? And then he paused and he didn't answer. And the man asked three times in a row. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, لَوْ قُلْتَ نَعَمْ لَوَجَبَتْ. If I said yes, then it would have been made a farida, would have been made obligatory, and this would be too much for you to do. So generally speaking, we say that it's recommended to do it, to travel there when we have the ability to do so. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second in terms of kind of some of the circumstances that we face now with travel in the day and age that we live in. The Umrah itself and the Hajj in general, we go there to Mecca specifically. I'll talk about Medina in a second, the resting abode of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Mecca, which is the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and where he spent the first 13 years of his da'wah, of his mission, was in Mecca. The Kaaba that is there, it is the qibla of our prayer, it is the direction of our prayer, of our five ritual prayers, as we all know. And this Kaaba, as mentioned in the Quran, was established by Ibrahim and Ismail, by the prophets Abraham and Ishmael. And the Prophet ﷺ is a direct descendant of that line, coming from Ismail or Ishmael through Ibrahim or Abraham. The Quran also mentioned in the awwala baytin wudi'a linnasi lalladhi bi Makkah. And Mecca is another name for Mecca. So the first house of worship that was established there was in Mecca. Some of the riwayat indicate that Adam alayhi salam, the first man and the first prophet, established it there. But the Kaaba and its place in the form that we know now, we generally attribute it to Ibrahim and Ismail. And we know that Ibrahim alayhi salam received wahi revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to this place, بواد غير ذي زرع عند بيتك المحرم, واد غير ذي زرع, in a valley that doesn't have any vegetation whatsoever, but عند بيتك المحرم, but where your Bayt al-Muharram, where the sacred house is or should be or was. All of those meanings are true. And it was there that he took Hajar alayhi salam, the mother of his child at the time, Ismail, and he was told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave her there in this particular place. And she asked him, is this something that you are commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do? And he said, yes. Then she said, إِذَنْ لَا يُضَيَّعْنَا. If that's the case, then we will not be lost here, because this is what Allah wants. And so Ibrahim left them as he was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Hajar alayhi salam went back and forth between the two mountains of Safa and Marwa. And on the seventh time, the well of Zamzam, which had been hidden for however long before that, sprout forth. And she was able to feed her child and herself from that well, from the well of Zamzam. And then later on, Bani Jurhum came, and this was أَفْئِدَةً مِنَ النَّاسِ تَأْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ, as was asked for by Ibrahim in the dua, a group of people who came to them. And from there, Ismail alayhi salam married from that Arab tribe, and then the Prophet ﷺ was a descendant of that, but from al-Arab al-Adnaniyin, from many centuries, obviously later. So there's this kind of primordial link between our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Prophet Abraham, who is the patriarchal prophet, or maybe the archetypal prophet. He's also referred to as Abu al-Anbiya, right? He is the father of the prophets, because he is kind of his line. All of the prophets of Bani Israel also came, the prophets of the tribes of Israel, via the other line of Ishaq, his other son. And then we have from the line of Ismail alayhi salam, all of the prophets who came via that line, specifically the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa ala sa'ir al-anbiya wal mursalin alayhi salam. So all these meanings come forth when we talk about Umrah, or we talk about the Hajj. It has this sort of significance to it, Mecca specifically. And, human beings were part of kind of two realms or two worlds. We're part of Alam al-Mulk, which is Alam al-Shahada, so the realm of that which can be seen and that which can be perceived, which is the realm that we're in right now. But we also have a part of us that's from Alam al-Malakut, right, which is the realm of the unseen and of the celestial realm that exists and is real, but nevertheless is not perceptible, because in this particular existence we're now, where we have a physical body, this actually is the veil between us and that realm. But nevertheless, our hearts, our spiritual hearts, still can have glimpses and insight into that realm. And by connecting ourselves with this primordial place of Mecca, it's a way to sort of bring forth and to facilitate that perception of Alam al-Malakut. Because there's certainly something very Malakuti about Mecca in general, and about sacred places or sacred spaces. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this place sacred. And it was the Prophet ﷺ who said that someone who prays in Mecca is like 100,000 prayers anywhere else. And that's not because of anything particularly physical about the place, but it's something that's spiritual about the place, the Malakuti aspect. of the place of Mecca, of this particular sacred space, and it's called Al Haram, right? And Haram comes from the same word as Haram, which means that which is inviolable, right? And that which is sacrosanct, and that which should not be violated. So there are specific rules that apply. So just as good deeds are magnified in the Hijaz and Mecca and Medina specifically, so are bad deeds. Right? It's much worse to commit a sin in Mecca and Medina than anywhere else. Just like it's much better to do something that is praiseworthy in Mecca and Medina. So we, inshallah, will go with the intention that this is our, this is the qibla not just of our prayer but of our hearts. This is where the heart should be turned as well, and because that physical place signifies the Malakuti place, and in some of the riwayat it also mentions that al Bayt al Ma'mur, right, which is a Bayt, which is a sacred house, but in the celestial realm is directly above, right, in a meaning that we can't perceive, but nevertheless, that's how it's mentioned, above the Bayt Allah al Muharram, the sacred house in Mecca, and that 70,000 angels enter and exit every day. 70,000 new angels enter and exit every day from this particular sacred space that has a connection to Mecca. So many meanings associated with visiting Al Haram and making Umrah there. So Umrah in the language just means to visit. To make Timar or to make Umrah means to visit a place. So it's a place that we intend to visit, but there are certain manasik, there are certain rites associated with it. And because of the sacred nature of the place, there are certain protocols, let's say, for lack of a better word, that we try to observe that the Sharia has stipulated when we go to make this sacred visit. And these protocols will have to do with both something about us, what we wear, what we refrain from doing, and how we approach Mecca. So one of the first things that we learn when we're intending to make Hajj, or for that matter, Umrah, this idea of al-mawaqit, or al-miqat, right? And the miqat are kind of like sacred signposts outside of Mecca, such as that one should not go past the miqat without being in a state of what's called ihram. So ihram is the state. Oftentimes people say, well, ihram means for the men that they wear the two towel-looking things, the rida and the izar from the bottom, and then that's ihram. That's one of the stipulations of ihram, but actually ihram is an intention, right? And it's a state of mind, a state of the heart. So I'm entering into the ihram because I'm entering into this sacred area. So there are certain mawaqit, 4 or 5 or 6 of them outside of Mecca. For our purposes, when we were going to do the Umrah, inshallah, we're going to Medina first. So our miqat will be Dhul Hulayfa, or what's referred to today as Abiyar Ali, which is actually the furthest miqat of all of them. So there's Al-Juhfa, there's Malamlam for the people of Yemen, that's to the south. But Dhul Hulayfa, or Abiyar Ali, is actually the furthest in terms of distance. And they said this is a type of tashrif for the people of Medina, because the people of Medina, outside of Mecca, they were the first people to really embrace Islam very strongly, and they were the ones, even when there was ridda, there was apostasy afterwards, they did not leave Islam. So people in other parts of the Arabian Peninsula, there was some issue with this. But the people of Medina have a special place, and so their miqat is special in that it's close as it can be to their own city and furthest away from Mecca. So it used to take by conventional travel in their days, which was by camel, something like 10 days to 2 weeks, traveling every day by camel to get to Mecca from Medina, to travel south to Mecca. Nowadays, you can do it by train in like 3 hours now, or even less, and or you can do it by bus in a little bit more than that. But our intention, not sure if we're actually going to make the ihram at the miqat or sometime before it, whatever the case may be, that's when we enter into the state of ihram. And the state of ihram is the intention. It's also signified by vocalizing that intention, which is called al-talbiyah. لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. So the talbiyah is saying, labbaik means I am at your service, I'm at your call, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So labbaik Allahumma labbaik. I am at your call, I'm at your service. Labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. There's no partners with you, and I am at your service. Inna alhamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. So all praise and all blessings are attributed to you solely, no partners in that, and I am at your call and at your service. So this is kind of what signifies um, entering to the state of ihram. Additionally, there's going to be mahdurat al-ihram, right? Mahdurat means the things you stay away from during ihram. So when we are making a sacred pilgrimage, right, um, then the kind of overwhelming or number one attribute should be humility, right? We're trying to leave our egos behind. We're trying to leave our nufus behind, and we want to go and be in as a pure state as possible. So some of the stipulations of ihram are are stipulated for that very purpose. So for men, specifically, they are to get rid of anything that is, they should not wear anything that has been tailored to fit their body, or anything that has closed together or sewn together either by buttons or by zippers or anything of the like. So it's really two simple garments, al-rida wal izar, right? The rida is kind of just a long, looks like a big towel, but it doesn't have to be towel fabric. It could be something like this. It doesn't actually have to be white. The white is preferred. And basically anything that you wrap around, right? Even if you had a tailored garment, but you're not wearing it as a tailored garment and you're wrapping it around you, that would also suffice. And the same thing for the izar, something that goes around the waist. And that means anything that has a marking of zina, of adornment, should also be left. So that includes perfume, that includes cologne, that includes even, one shouldn't wear a ring. Uh, the strictest of opinions also say don't even wear a watch because it circles around your wrist. There's some issue with the belts that people wear. Some of them, the fuqaha, say that if you're going to have a belt, then don't have it around your izar, such as it's holding it up, but it should be directly around the body. And then in that case, it's a dispensation for just to carry your valuables. Um, there are some modern sort of kind of facilitations, and I see people with clasps and buttons, and I don't have an opinion about that. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Omar could speak to more to that in his session, but personally, I'm not comfortable with any of that. I think we should just go with the simple, wrap it around you, and there's a way to wrap around the bottom part. So, inshallah, when we're with the men, I'm not going to do that now, but we'll go over that when the time comes. For women, however, they also have an ihram. As we said, it's an intention. The only difference is the ihram is going to be a different part because we have another qima or principle called modesty. So they can't just wear a towel or two towels around their body, but they're not to have anything on their hands like gloves, and they're not to cover their face. Um, and they are not to have any sort of sweet smelling or perfume or anything like this as well. In terms of footwear, for men, the only stipulation is that whatever you wear should not go above your ankle. So it doesn't have to be, bathroom flip flops because there's no sewing in it. That's incorrect. You should wear sturdy shoes because you're going to walk quite a bit, but wear sandals where your ankle is not covered; it's below the ankle. So that could be, like sliders, or it could be, anything, or even a sandal, but nothing above the ankle. Um, and that's basically in terms of dress. At that time, when we do the talbiyah, it's also preferred that you do two rak'ahs, whether it's a fard prayer or a sunnah prayer, right before. And before that, you do what's called the ghusl, the purificatory bath, and that's for everybody. And then they do the rak'ahs. If it's a sunnah or fard prayer, then they do the talbiyah and the intention. And also, it's preferred beforehand that if you're going to like cut nails and cut hair, all of that is done before because none of that is permitted when you are in the state of ihram. And you shouldn't actually pull at your hair or your beard or kill an ant or anything like this. So you're not allowed to kind of harm anything unless it's the Prophet ﷺ mentioned 5 types of animals that are that could be harmful. It includes scorpions and a rabid dog and things like that. But I don't think we're going to run into that. So inshallah we won't. So that's kind of in terms of the ihram. Then at that point, we would make the intention to go towards Mecca and we'll be on our way. One should recite the talbiyah periodically as they're going towards Mecca. Uh, then once we get close and we're able to be in the vicinity of Mecca, it's preferred also, again, I'm not sure the details of how we're going to do it exactly in the logistics, but to kind of get all of your stuff in order wherever you're going to be staying and then not really hang out or anything like that. And the first thing, the adab, the etiquette, is to go straight to the haram and begin to perform your umrah. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do it like that. You can refresh, even if you have the ihram, you can take it off, you can take a shower, put it back on. Those things are permitted. You can stand under the shade of a tree, but men cannot wear anything on their head or anything that's attached to them that will add like a shade. So once we get there, then inshallah, we see there's actually a preferred door to enter from. I'm not sure if we're going to do or not. Bab Beni Shayba, which is Bab al-Salam, which is the door that right now lies right in the middle of the Sa'i, which is the Safa and Marwa. Last time I was there was a lot of construction going on. I'm not really sure how the setup is right now. But if we're able to go through that door, and some of them also would like to do that, we can. We'd have to cut through the Sa'i, and then we make like a beeline straight for the Kaaba. And then once we lay our eyes on the Kaaba, this is a time of reflection upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a time that we think about the great blessing. How many of the people who want to be where you're standing right there and are not able to for whatever reason, but Allah has put you there. So don't think like, oh, it's my hard work and good planning and these things are got me to Mecca and other people just didn't plan as well as me or didn't have as much hard work. A'udhu billah. This is by invitation only. So you're only there because Allah invited you. And you're answering that invitation. That's what the talbiyah means, labbaik. Right? Allah's asking you, He's requesting you, He's inviting you. And you say, I'm at your service, I'm at your call. So when you look at the Kaaba, there's some dua that we'll learn about that say just make this Kaaba zidha ta'ziman wa tashrifan, make it azim in my eyes and make it honorable in everybody's eyes and ennobled. And then in earnest we start the tawaf. The Kaaba itself is a cubit, so it's 4 equal sides. However, at the back, facing from where we're going to start, on the other side from where is something called Hijr Ismail, which is a semicircle that has some space. You can actually go inside of it, but this signifies the original Kaaba, which was elongated. However, during the time of Quraysh, it was made into the square type of thing. So we have to make tawaf around the whole thing. So you're actually making tawaf not just around the Kaaba, but what's considered Hijr Ismail. So don't cross through in between. Then you haven't made tawaf around the Kaaba. Also, if you get close enough, and I'm not sure how quiet it's going to be, you will notice there's like a buttress that, this is the wall of the Kaaba, then there's a buttress that comes down like that, which is not so big. This is called the Shadrwan. And that also is considered from the Kaaba, even though the wall of the Kaaba doesn't extend out as far. So don't walk too close where your body is inside of that, right? So if you're walking around the Kaaba, don't be actually having your shoulder resting and touching the Kaaba, doing that, because then you're not outside of this thing, the buttress called the Shadrwan. So you want to be outside of that, and then you totally encircle that 7 times. And we begin with Hajar al-As'ad or Hajar al-Aswad, that sacred rock from Jannah, which is in the corner of, there'll be a line there that you'll see where it begins if we can't see it. It's sunnah, at least in the Maliki school, to try to get close to it and to kiss it. If you're not able to do that, that's okay. And under no circumstances should we do any of the preferred things by harming others. So yes, it's preferred to go and kiss it, but if you have to push and shove to get there, that's haram. So we don't seek an ends that is preferred or merely sunnah by something that is haram. So in that case, we go from far away. And honestly, Faqir myself, the last time I was able to kiss it was, I can't remember. It was back in the time, maybe the late 80s or early 90s, where it wasn't that crowded and there was not many people going to it. So I don't really even try to do it anymore because it's kind of crowded all year round. So it's not a big priority. it's better for you not to do it and not harm anybody than to kind of get up there and have to push and shove. And invariably, if you do get up there, unless there's some sort of karama, you will wind up getting pushed and shoved, and you may push and shove in return. So, that's kind of where I see about it. Some other people have a different opinion, but if we can make it, we can. I don't know. We'll have to see. Otherwise, then we just have ishara to it, right? Which is like this, and then you bring your hand to your face without making a sound, and then you begin the Sab'a Ashwat. On the other side, all around, is something called al-Rukn al-Yamani, which is going to be exposed. The Kiswa of the Kaaba will expose it. That we should also try to touch. That's something the Prophet ﷺ did. But again, the same thing. If it's difficult to get to, we don't have to. And generally speaking, in the 7 circumambulation of the Kaaba, we just dua. We should be in a state of wudu. For men, al-ramal, which is to have a more hurried pace in the first 3 circumambulations or ashwat, is sunnah. Women don't have to do that. And this goes back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ when they made their Umrah and Umrah al-Qada, I believe, when they made up Umrah, and the Quraysh said, "Oh, the Muslims, they're so tired and they're coming from Medina, and how are they going to do, the manasik correctly and so forth?" So the Prophet ﷺ told the men specifically, show them you're strong and do a more hurried pace around the first 3 ashwat. And so that sunnah remained. Just like the sunnah of reading our prayers silently for Dhuhr and Asr, which was the sunnah in Mecca, because that's when people were awake, and during that time of persecution, the Prophet ﷺ said, pray these 2 prayers silently so the Quraysh don't hear you. And then the night prayers were done loudly. So to do those first 3 at a faster pace, and it's called al-Ramal, and then the last 4 at a regular walking pace. Can you actually wind up doing the Ramal? Again, it depends on how crowded the Sahin is. The Sahin is the lower part where the Kaaba is. The last Umrah I made, it was so crowded, and this was last year, that I had to go upstairs. And I also had my father, rahimahullah, who was pushing around. So if you have people that you're going to be pushing on a wheelchair, they don't allow you to do it actually in the lower place. Keep that in mind. So you're going to have to take the longer way around, which is going to be the 2nd or 3rd floor. And it's about 7 times as long in terms of distance. So that's something to bear in mind if you have someone you're going to be pushing along with you. And it's just going to take you longer. You go at your own pace. But if you have the ability to be downstairs, it's more crowded, generally speaking, depending on time of day or night. But it's a good thing to be able to kind of see the Kaaba while you are making the tawaf. So the Kaaba is going to be on your left, because your heart is on the left side. So this is the qibla also of the heart. It should be pointing that way. You shouldn't face it. Like even when you pass at Hajar al-Aswad, don't face it. You just make ishara and you keep moving. And any dua that you say is fine. Specifically, Allahumma atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar is something that's sunnah. Give us the good of this life and the good of the next life is ma'thul, that the Prophet ﷺ would say. And it's okay to read from a book of dua. I would say it's not okay to do selfies, even though you're going to see a lot of people doing that. It's not adab, it's not etiquette. Not where you're in Umrah, at least, not when you're doing the tawaf. And I think that would be disturbing to me, to be honest with you, if I saw someone in our group doing that. Because this is not the time for it. It could be done later, but I'd say, we're so anxious to like capture the moment that we don't live the moment. So just let the ma'ani and the meanings and focus and concentrate on the task at hand, right? Which is, you're saying to Allah, labbaik. And at the same time, you're holding this thing that's called a selfie, right? Like nafsi, like Sheikh Hamza says, it's a nafsi, right? So labbaik and nafsi don't go together. So labbaik means it's about Allah, it's not about you anymore. So, I've seen people talk on the phone and they're FaceTiming also while they're doing that. And, they're telling people back home, oh, look, I'm in the Kaaba, look, that's nice. But the focus should be on the tawaf is like the Tahiyyat al-Masjid. It's like when we go into any other mosque and we pray the 2 rak'ahs, that's basically what the tahiyyah of the Kaaba is, to do the tawaf, which is a circumambulate the Kaaba. So after we finish our 7 ashwat, or 7 circumambulations, um, then we have to have connected with it 2 rak'ahs of prayer, which are done behind Maqam Ibrahim. So if you're looking at Al-Hajar al-Aswad, Maqam Ibrahim is over here to your right. Make sure that you do it far enough back and not in the mataf. Not in the in other words, don't pray your 2 rak'ahs and people are trying to walk around you making tawaf. At its busiest, the whole sahan, right, which is the whole lower part, is full of people making tawaf. So you might have to go up the stairs a little bit, and you can actually make these 2 rak'ahs anywhere in the masjid, anywhere in Mecca for that matter. So you're not limited to right behind Maqam Ibrahim, and so don't feel pressure that you have to do it that way. Do it in a place that they can actually concentrate and focus and so forth. Once you've done that, the books do mention that you go back to Hajar al-Aswad again, if you can kiss it, but again, that depends upon if we're able to do it or not. You should also try to go to Bab al-Multazim, which is the big golden door right on the other side from the Hajar al-Aswad. And if you're able to get to that and outstretch your hands on it and make dua over there, that would be great. Again, no pushing and shoving to get there. Then once you're done with that, then you can take sharba of ma' zamzam, take something of zamzam from any of the containers you see around, and then you make your way towards as-Safa wal Marwa. And as we said earlier, the Safa and Marwa are the 2 mountains by which Sittina Hajar went between back and forth until the well of Zamzam became manifest. So you begin at Safa, right, the mount of Safa. The Prophet ﷺ, this was an actual mountain at one point. Now it's just kind of like a ramp. And you should only ascend in as much you can still see the Kaaba. That's what the Prophet ﷺ would do. So you ascend the mountain. And this used to be outside of the masjid, wasn't inside. Now it's actually inside. And when prayer time comes, the mas'a, which is the walkway or the runway between Safa and Marwa, now is a place where people pray as well. That didn't used to be the case. And even 2 decades ago, that wasn't the case. But now it's properly inside the masjid. So you might have some columns and things in the way, but as long as you can see the Kaaba from there, you'll be able to see it. Then you make dua on top of that, and you should stay a while. And then make the 7 legs. So unlike the tawaf, it's also 7, but it's 2 points. So you're going to walk all the way to the Marwa part, stop there, dua, then come back this way. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, you finish at the Marwa. So you start at the Safa and you finish at the Marwa. You will also see 2 green lines, al-milin. For men, they should do what's called al-Isra, which is a little bit faster than Rawan, what they did in the Tawaf. So it's kind of a little bit faster pace. So you do it on the way going there and on the way back when you see between the 2 green lines. And again, you could read Quran, you can make dua, you can do all sorts of things while you're going between the Safa and Marwa. And it's probably at least from one to the next several hundred yards. I would say maybe 200-300, I don't know exactly. Once we finish that and we finish up at the Marwa, then we're more or less done with the Umrah. The only thing that's left is what's called the Tahallul, which means we're getting out of the Ihram. In Umrah, the only thing that gets us out of the Ihram is either shaving the head or cutting the hair for men, or cutting some of the hairs for women. Women should not shave their head. And it has to be done by someone who's not in a state of Ihram. So for men, there are places you can walk to that are close by to the Haram, where you can do that. And for women, usually the husband or some family member who's out of Ihram can just cut a few hairs of a few of the locks. Nothing significant, but symbolic for women. And then they're out of their Ihram. And then after that, you can wear regular clothes and you can do all the things that were not permitted before the state of Ihram. And that's the Umrah. So that whole thing usually doesn't take more than a couple hours. It depends upon how crowded it is. And then the rest of the time, we intend al-Mukth fi Mecca, however number of days, I think 3 or 4 days we stay in Mecca, and we should attempt and pray all of the 5 prayers in the Haram as much as we can. And it's good if you go early and try to get a little bit closer to the Kaaba itself, and also to respect the sacred space, right? We don't want any rafath or fusuq or asyan, as the Quran mentions. So no um, no corrupt activities, no rafath, no asyan, no disobedience, no harming of others. It's a place where we should be especially patient and clement and not get angry with people. You're going to be dealing with people from all different sorts of cultures and understandings and levels of religious commitment, and keep all of that in mind. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. There's nothing wrong about that. And so we could try to do our best to not fall prey to our weakest base kind of impulses. And that's a test because you're dealing with people who don't think the same way as you do and don't have the same cultural mores and things like that. But that's part of the I think the spiritual training that you get when you go to Mecca. Um, as for Medina, which we're going to go to first, some of the ulama in the Hashia of Imam al-Sawi and the Dardir and the Maliki fiqh, the ulama said that it's actually it's obligatory, that you should go to in Medina at least once in your life. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man zara qabri kalladhi zarani hayyan aw kalladhi zarani hayyan." Whoever visits my grave, it's like they visited me when I'm alive, and that should be the adab and the intention, because we don't think of the Prophet ﷺ as dead, and we think anyone who is a righteous person is still being alive; their spirit is alive. So what about our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? So that means when we go to Medina, and this is his Medina, right? And Medina al-Munawwara, right? The enlightened or the illumined Medina, bisababihu, right? Because of the Prophet ﷺ. There's no other reason why it's illumined or enlightened except because of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we should enter with adab, with waqar, with serenity, with tranquility, with humility. Imam al-Sha'rani, he said that, when I go, I don't even wear a turban, I don't wear anything, I go completely humble. Many of the great ulama, like Imam Malik, even wouldn't put on their shoes inside in Medina. They wouldn't ride, he would take his mount outside of the precincts of Medina before he would get on his horse or get on his camel. This was the level of love and mahabba and respect and reverence they had for the place where the same feet of the Prophet and Sallallahu and the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een and all of the ulama and the scholars and the righteous people, they treaded the same places you're treading. You're walking on the same places that you're going to be walking on. So keep that in mind when you're walking around in Medina. You're breathing the same air that they were breathing. You're interacting and touching the same sand and rocks that they dealt with, that our Prophet ﷺ dealt with. So treat every single, square millimeter of space in Medina as sacred. And the same goes for Mecca, but Medina also, because certainly someone, and most likely even the Prophet ﷺ himself, stepped on that place where you're stepping on. So the adab then is to also enter Medina and nubadir ila ziyarah, that we should try to make the ziyarah. We're going to do many visits, inshallah, but that first visit, you should try to do it as soon as you can. And it's also good to do ghusl and tatayyub, to have a ghusl, to have some tib for men, that is, on misk or something like that, or oud, and then enter into the masjid and pray to Hayat al-Masjid, pray the 2 rakahs of greeting the mosque, and then we make our way towards the visit of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There's a couple different ways we can visit, and especially for women, there's a couple different ways, and men. Women's visiting hours are at least 3 times in the day. I'm not sure exactly what they are right now, but you may come at a time when it's not open. In that case, you can still make ziyarah from outside the masjid. So if you're outside and you see the green dome, the Prophet ﷺ, the Hujra Sharifa, the sacred chamber, is right underneath that green dome. So I know some of our scholars, and I've done it with them, we've made ziyarah from the outside. And you can do that. The preferred way is to enter via Bab Jibril and walk straight through. There's kind of a straight walk that now they don't allow people to pray in it, so it's kind of just always moving. But again, that depends upon whose visiting time it is. So for men, you should make your way towards there and make your way towards visiting the Prophet ﷺ, so that you're in front of the gate, right, and maqam or mawqif, right in front where the Prophet and wajh sharifa. So when you're standing there, you'll see three gates. Prophet ﷺ and his two companions, they'll be inside the first one, but they'll be kind of staggered. So it's like Prophet ﷺ was like this, then Abu Bakr, and then Umar is behind him like that, in terms of what it is. And that's even inside the Hujrah, there's also a large tomb over it. Right? If you look inside, you can see that, and it's covered with a kiswa. It's covered with like a covering. And usually dignitaries and VIPs are allowed to go in the Hujrah. We wish we could do that maybe someday. But from the outside, uh, the adab is to imagine, and not just imagine, know the Prophet ﷺ is right in front of you. And he also said, when you give me the salam, Allah returns me so that I may give you the salam back. يرد روحي, which doesn't mean that he was dead, but it means his ruh is in a state of mushahada. It's something completely, a state of hudur with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But to give us, Allah will take him out of that so that he can return our salam. So keep that in mind. Prophet ﷺ, he's returning your salam. Maybe you hear it, maybe you feel it, maybe you don't. But as you're in front of that hujrah, you say, Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, Assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, Assalamu alaikum ya Khalil Allah, Assalamu alaikum ya Safi Allah. Whatever comes into your heart, say it. Give salams to the Prophet ﷺ. Then give salams to Abu Bakr, give salams to Umar, radiallahu anhuma. Seek by the jah and the makana of the Prophet ﷺ. This place is like, your dua is mustajab, right? This is the place to make dua. There are several places in the sacred precinct, amongst them in front of Al-Wajh Sharifa, in the Tawaf also, when you first see the Kaaba. There's many manatik for istijabat dua, where your dua will be answered. So keep that in mind and seek it via the jah and status and makana of our Prophet Muhammad with his Lord. And inshallah, satuqda al-hawa'ij, right? Your needs will be taken care of. And one of the way that your needs get taken care of is you get lifted into a state where you no longer see them as needs. So you think, oh, I need this certain job and this certain promotion and this certain spouse and this certain kind of lifestyle. But one of the ways that really Allah can uplift you is you no longer see those things as needs. They become something like, what was I thinking about? It's trivial. Here I am, and it's me and Rasulullah. What more can I be seeking? So, we have that adab, we have that respect when we visit. Also, respect the people who are put in positions of maintenance and authority there. We don't agree with all of the things that they ask us or that they would ask us not to do. However, our teachers said, don't get in a fight with them. Don't snap back at them. Don't be rude, because this is right in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And if the Quran tells us, "La tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabi," right? Don't raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet ﷺ. And he's not speaking right now, so you're just raising your voice in any way, any type of mushajara, any type of uh, get into it with them. Don't do that. Just say Jazakallah khair, shukran, thank you. And it's tempting to, because a lot of them honestly are jahala, they don't know anything. But Allah put them for now in this place, and they have, despite our objections to, the kind of religious edicts that many of those scholars from Saudi Arabia come up with, they do actually a very good job of maintaining the place. And to think of the sheer numbers that come in and out, it's quite a monumental task that they have before them. And so we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's been facilitated for us and we can do that. And they don't allow us to linger a little bit longer than we like. And if they want to move us along, and they'll tell us, don't raise your hands in dua in front of the qabr. We don't agree with all of those fatwa, but not getting into the mix with them is more important than raising our hands in front of Al-Hujra Sharifa. And we can raise them, we cannot raise them, or we can raise them and ignore them. But at the same time, I would say don't try to get into mix with them. That would be my my best advice. Wallahu a'lam, and inshallah it'll be a beneficial, it'll be a Mubarak trip for everybody. And, we're going to have elements of sohbah, companionship with the mashayikh, with Dr. Omar and Sheikh Muhammad, Dr. Maryam. We'll have also elements of rihla, right, of traveling for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, everyone is going to get according to their intentions. So hopefully Allah will meet us at those intentions and even surpass them. So I think now we'll go to questions. Okay. So I'm going to look at them here on my phone. Yeah. Few questions. If I'm in Mecca and Medina whilst menstruating, where am I allowed to enter or be? I know I cannot enter inside of the mosque, but can I be in the outdoor grounds of the Masjid of Medina, for example? Or do I have to remain outside the entire area? And likewise with the Haram in Mecca, am I prohibited from being while menstruating? No, I follow the Maliki Madhab. Okay. The main thing is you stay out of the Musalla area. So in Mecca, that would be in Mataf. Try to stay away from there. Outside of the walls, where there's still tile outside, that's not the masjid. So that for certain you could be there, even though people are praying outside in that area, but certainly you can be there, even though they're praying. Inside, however, I don't know, to be honest with you, whether I would say how far inside can we consider it still properly the masjid because it's been expanded to such a great degree, like Musalla area, or do we can consider it something else? But I would say the safest opinion is as long as you're outside of the walls of the masjid, then um, you're perfectly free to be there, which would be the outdoor grounds. And the same thing goes for Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina. People do pray outside, and they have those umbrella, I don't know what they call them, those umbrella shades that go up, and people pray under that, but that's outside the masjid technically. So any of that white tile that's outside in either place, I think it's okay for you to be there. If a woman gets her period on her way to Mecca and she is unable to perform Umrah, how can the restrictions of Ihram be lifted? Well, when we make intention for the Ihram, we say we're going to continue the Ihram unless under the stipulation that يحبسني habis, something gets in the way of that. So, at that point, you're lifted from the Ihram. You don't have to continue with it. And or you can stay in the haram depending on how long we're going to stay. But for most women, it's not going to work because if it's going to last 5, 6, 7 days, whatever it might be, and we're only staying 4 days in Mecca, then it's not one is not going to be able to actually do the tawaf part, even though the other parts, sa'i and the salah, actually go with that. We asked about this, and it's not question is not here, but if a woman wants to take some sort of medication to stop her period while she's doing that, if as long as it's not harmful to the body, then it's okay to do that. So birth control, some people do actually do that before they go to the Umrah in order not to get their period while they're there. So that is an option if you're comfortable with that, and if your doctor is comfortable with that. It's not going to cause any sort of undue effects. And I think usually you have to take it several weeks before you actually start taking it several weeks before you get there. Can you detail the dress code for women and men, particularly for those not familiar with Saudi standards? What kind of clothes and hijab items will I need for Umrah? Generally, what you wear. Certainly, women, I strongly and highly recommend that you wear hijab all the time, especially in Mecca and Medina. Some cities in Saudi Arabia now, it's a little bit less restrictive, like Jeddah, which we will fly leaving from Jeddah. But I would say the safest thing is to have an abaya, some sort of overgarment that's preferably black, and a hijab that could be on a color you want, but black is okay too when you are in Mecca and Medina. The idea here is to be as inconspicuous as possible. You don't want to stand out. So Certainly trousers for women and that sort of thing that you might wear back home, I wouldn't recommend that at all. And you don't want undue attention, especially from people who are in a position of authority. So I would say just have a couple of abaya, kind of overgarments, and hijab, same color. What things break ihram, particularly being a husband and a wife? Um, any sort of sexual touching or intercourse is prohibited, and that breaks ihram. Prophet ﷺ also even said something like non-sexual touching, if it's going to lead to sexual touching, it's makruh, so it should be avoided unless you don't think that's going to be the case. But to be on the safe side, then avoid that type of contact. Can you do Umrah on behalf of someone else, i.e., a deceased relative, and so can you combine intentions, do it on behalf of a number of people at a time? You can do it, assuming that you've already done your own some other year. Um, can you do it on behalf of a number of people at the same time, more than one person? I don't know. Usually when we do it, we intend for one person. So maybe you can ask Dr. Omar about that. How does an Umrah made on behalf of a deceased relative? Here it says disease, but I think deceased is what they mean. Uh, well, the Malikiya, I can only speak from the Maliki school, they don't really allow that. If someone is sick and they're not able to do it, then you don't have to do it. So it's not something you can do on behalf of someone else. But I would say if you're in Umrah and you're in Mecca and you're in Medina and you're a place of istijabat dua and your dua is going to be answered, then pray for them. If they passed away, then you can do it on their behalf. You can intend it for them.
And does that affect they pass away and you on behalf of that affect
Yeah, it's like reading the Fatiha for them or giving sadaqah in their name. It will give them light in their qabr, inshallah, in their grave. So I'm going to go to the other questions. Are there any texts in English that are recommended to read beforehand for preparation for the Umrah covering the basic fiqh or spiritual dimensions? I can't think of anything offhand. I know there are some things. I have to think about that, and maybe we can prepare a list for the next time before the next session with Dr. Omar. What should our intention be at each stop of our journey, starting from when leaving our homes, arriving in Medina, when leaving Medina, arriving in Mecca, and finally leave Mecca? How do we spiritually prepare the heart and become present at every stage of the journey? That's a good question. When you know, let me know, because we're all trying to do that. But I would say it's about throw your humum behind you, throw your those things that are keeping us spiritually kind of suspended, right? We're hung up on things that we're thinking about in terms of issues we have to contend with and things like that. So I'm not saying ignore your problems, but have the intention that you're going to go and come back, and all of those hawa'ij satuqdalak, all of those things that you need to be taken care of, have the intention that all of them will be taken care of. Not by anything that you're going to do, but by everything that Allah can do for you. So it's about taslim, right? Have an intention of taslim, acquiescing, and putting it all at the doorstep of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and relieve yourself of the burden of having to worry about it yourself. You have to come with your cup empty, as they say. So if your cup is full and you go to Mecca and you go to Medina, or you go to the Quran, or you go to Ramadan and your cup is full, you're not going to get much out of it. But when your cup is empty, some of the ulama call this state tajreed. Tajreed means stripped of all of the encumbrances that that kind of shackle us, our nafsaniyat, things that we busy us in terms of worldly and dunyawi aspirations and worldly humum. So to kind of put all that aside, right? At least for the 10 days or 9 days that we're going to be there, and just leave it aside. And I would say also, quit social media for the 8 or 9 days. You don't have to give people an update on Facebook or Twitter, or Instagram, like, oh, look me at Masjid al-Qiba, and let the ma'ani come to you. And I think these things are a hijab, they're a veil. They're spiritual veils, especially if that's what you're thinking about. Because again, you're combining nafsi with nurani, right? You're combining something that's very dark and nafsani and egoistic and at the same time, you're trying to do something that's very divine and enlightening. So, the divine and illumination is not going to come to you if it's full in here, right? And it's busy with all of these other things. So that would be my recommendation. How do you spiritually prepare yourself before physically standing before the Prophet ﷺ? Or in the month of Rabi'ah, and I think we will still be in the month of Rabi'ah when we get there towards the end of it. And this is a blessed month, so you can prepare yourself by reading more about the seerah, read the shama'il, read the attributes of the Prophet ﷺ. Try to do at least 1,000 salawat on the Prophet ﷺ before you get there. If you can do it daily from now until then, that would be great. If not, do like at least 100 a day if you're not doing that already. And again, get rid of any grudges you have with people, any sort of quarrels you're having, especially with family members. I should have said this earlier. Fix that before you go. That's one of the things. Like it's a hijab. It's also a veil. Keep you from getting the best benefit. So you don't want to be encumbered with those things. If you're mad at somebody, forgive them. If they're mad at you, go to them and ask for forgiveness. If they don't forgive you, then that's on them. That's not on you. But at least you're the one who made the mubadara. You want to have salamat al-sadr. You want to have a heart that's free of encumbrances, and that's one of the worst ones, especially silat al-raham, right? Especially things related to relatives, and the closer the relatives are, like parents or brothers and sisters, you really not want to carry that with you. So try as best as you can to kind of facilitate that before you go. Are there specific dua or dhikr that one makes in the Rawdah? I'm not aware of any. Again, it's makan. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Bayna qabri wa minbari rawdah min riyad al-jannah." Between my grave and my minbar, there's a rawdah min riyad al-jannah. If you can get to it even at least once, that's great. It's not that easy. People kind of just go there and park there, but we do our best. And once you get there, just ask for what you want from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best thing to ask from Allah is to help you in fulfilling that which He asks from you. That which He requests from you is the thing that we should be asking for. And the thing that we really need from Him is ghufran, for Him to forgive us for all of the mistakes that we make. Are there special prayers recited when you first gaze upon the Kaaba? There are. I mentioned part of it. Hopefully we will have, we're going to have some sort of handout or something like that that will contain the things we should say upon gazing on the Kaaba and entering Mecca, and the talbiyah, labbaik, Allahumma labbaik, and things like that. And hopefully we'll facilitate that, inshallah. So I think that's, yeah.
How, if you're physically able to, is it important, or should you try to perform more than one when you're not going, if you have time?
The Maliki school says you should only do it once in a year, and then it's makruh to do it more than once. So they see the Umrah as from your ufuq, your afaq, from where you're coming from. Other schools of thought allow it. I personally, I don't do more than one when I go, but I know people who want to do that, and that's okay, especially if they're intending it for like a relative or family member. So you have to go outside to what's called the Tan'im, which is Masjid Sayyidah Aisha, which is right outside the precincts of Al-Haram. You go and make ihram there, then you come back and do the same process that we just described earlier. So that's there. But again, following what I learned at the Maliki school, it's they don't say that that's wrong, it's not accepted, but it's not the same as making Umrah from Philadelphia or New York or Chicago or Cairo or wherever we're coming from. So, but it's something that people can do, inshallah, if they want.
What is the adab to have with people there who are from there, like in Medina, people who live there? Should you have a more particular adab?
With the people who live there, absolutely. These are, many of them are, yeah, the question was what type of adab should we have with the residents or inhabitants of Mecca and Medina? Many of them will have lineage back to the Sahaba, if not the Prophet ﷺ himself. So, keep that in mind. One of the things, especially in Medina, I think more so than Mecca, like I personally, if I'm going to buy things, I try not to haggle with the person. what are you going to save? 10 riyals or 20 riyals, which is like $5. Or, some people just kind of like want to feel like, oh, I got the bargain, but see it as a type of sadaqah. See it as being latif with the people of, especially the people of Medina. These are the people of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Mecca, you will feel. Some people feel like a more Jalali vibe in Mecca and a more Jamali vibe in Medina. Jalali means you feel like there is this sort of overwhelming aspect and nature of being in Mecca. And you feel that even in the mu'amalat, even in terms of interactions with people. Whereas Medina is much more Jamali. It's much more soft and gentle and beautiful, like the character of the Prophet. So, we should have this attitude with all people that we come into contact with, in general, Annie. So at the very least, as we always say, don't do harm to anybody, right? Don't, forgive people. Someone bumps into you, someone, you know, you got up for a second, then they took your spot. All those things are like not a big deal on the grand scale of things. Don't make a scene out of it. Don't make a thing out of it because of that. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ would have wanted from us. That's what he would expect from us. So hopefully we can live up to that. طيب, I think time is just up. Thank you all for listening and for participating. Inshallah, next week will be Dr. Omar. And we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates this trip for all of us and makes it easy and gives us completion of it and gives us good suhbah and gives everyone that which they're seeking from this life and the next. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.